Welcome to Making FinOps Work with Kubernetes, and welcome David in first line. That's actually a pretty awesome to have you here. David Sterz from Mindcurv, a company that focuses a lot on e-commerce. I think you've got a couple of words that you actually will use about Mindcurv and how it comes that you actually have to do with FinOps and know so much about FinOps. I think you've been in the space, active in the space for a little bit more than a year now. You know, a lot of experience with several customers, but predominantly with Vorwerk. Vorwerk is a German company that actually is in the manufacturing and cooking and household space. They've got a couple of machines that are very well known and also well known for their distribution system, at least around here. And the pandemics forced them to rethink their cost structure and you know, and focus on FinOps. So you actually headed that project and you know, gathered a lot of experience in that phase. That's actually pretty cool. And you actually also use that to contribute to you know, as a co-author of you know, foreign books about shared cost. I think I can share the link here in the chat, just if you're interested in reading up about that. And yeah, and with that having said, I think, oh, by the way, actually, congratulations. I think you're actually a co-chair, chair of the SIG containers in FinOps. So that actually was only this week, wasn't it? So yeah, pretty awesome to have you here. Welcome on board, everyone. Yeah, enjoy the speech of David. And if you've got any questions, just shoot them, please. And looking forward to an exciting discussion.
All right. Thanks, Franz, for the great introduction. Okay, then let's start. We have a lot of things to show. And I guess you also have some questions at the end. Hopefully we have time for that. So let's start. So today, join us for FinOps, making it work with Kubernetes. So the talk is more about FinOps, to give a rough introduction, what FinOps is, setting it in context, and how to make FinOps work in general. So we will put this into the context of Kubernetes, but we will not talk too much about the very deep details of Kubernetes of all kinds of. So the topic is really broad, what you can expect from me and from the foundation out of the SIG containers. From the FinOps Foundation, that you will get a lot of practical advice how to implement FinOps with Kubernetes in very detail with the tooling and practices around there. Okay, let's start with a bit of context to set the stage here. So this is my person. So I worked with cloud since 2008, started with AWS, and I have a long experience with live streaming, which brought me to the strict requirements when it comes to performance and reliability and optimizing it against it. So, and I entered Mindcurv, IoT and e-commerce in 2016. And I was always, of course, confronted and working with cloud financial management topic, but my full focus started with 2020, actually with COVID, when the clients asked that we need to further optimize or put a large focus on optimization. And as Franz said, I'm active practitioner in the FinOps community. There's a really great community. I can highly recommend to join there. Very helpful people, good advice, very fast growing at the current point. And yeah, just take a look. Also, a lot of good documents are in there. We are working on several run books that makes your life easier to implement FinOps in your organization. Good. Maybe 2 slides to Mindcurv 2011, working in many clouds. So we have the demand to provision e-commerce and IT platforms across multiple clouds for our clients. So that's why Kubernetes for us is also a strategic choice to deal with that situation. And the clients that we have, there are a few here, it's B2B and B2C. So it's really pretty much focused on e-commerce. And now let's put this into perspective of FinOps. And I would like to start a bit before FinOps started, which is actually the rise of the cloud economy. So where some of you might have seen this slide before, that there's a huge prediction of public cloud spend by 2022. We can verify that next year, how accurate this prediction was. But I believe all of you know or have noticed that the adoption of cloud has risen fairly fast in the last 20 years. And so the FinOps Foundation was founded to address the needs that comes with cloud financial management topics and financial operational topics. So it was founded 2019, so fairly young. And the numbers are much higher these days. By Storman, former founder of Cloudability, but now he's working on a non-profit organization because FinOps Foundation joins the Linux Foundation. Okay, so from the 360 billion predicted, we see already from a recent report, the State of FinOps report, I highly can recommend to read this. Very interesting insights, that 30 billion is already known to the FinOps Foundation. So, and you can see here, there are some tremendous, super large numbers. Look at this, you have 2.5% of people have 1 billion of cloud spend. So, so there was a survey, 804 responses, but you can see that that must be fairly large. And also the other, at least the people who responded to the report has quite some workloads in the cloud and costs associated with it. So I also found these like top challenges, and there was also service around this. And you can see that cost management seems to be a thing and also a challenge. And that's why there was the FinOps Foundation. And also with top cloud initiatives for 2020, Flexera also showed that there's a top initiatives is optimizing it before all the other initiatives. Good. So then here it's a very, very early, a recent survey that has been done with the CNCF together with FinOps around the Kubernetes spend. And here we can see that the increase by Kubernetes related spend has grown significant in the last 12 months, so more than 20%. So I think there's also the quotes out there that Kubernetes adoption is growing over 300%. Maybe Franz, you remember where this is coming from? I don't know it yet, but of course, adoption will also come with a cost increase. So these surveys, yeah, they just underline all of these. And also some interesting figures here that how much is your monthly Kubernetes related spend. And you can see here that there seem to be 10% of responders that have more than 1 million running in Kubernetes. I think this is pretty impressive to have these kind of, I don't know, super large clusters or many. We don't know this from the survey. But you can see here that the distribution is across all kind of sizes and costs in Kubernetes adoption. And yeah, that's what I wanted to show you up front to then look how FinOps can help you with this situation of rising cloud spend and your Kubernetes. But first of all, start with the official definition. There's one, what is FinOps? And it's a practice of bringing financial accountability to the variable spend model of cloud, enabling distributed teams to make business trade-offs between speed, cost, and quality. So in this talk, we'll pretty much focus on the balance between speed, cost, and quality on a Kubernetes platform. And also the FinOps Foundation gives you 6 guiding principles. Top one is, they are known in no particular order, but the FinOps Foundation pretty much emphasizes on the first one a lot, that teams need to collaborate. So you can see FinOps also in comparison to DevOps. So it's to break down silos and to make people communicate and understand each other. So this is the first principle. The second one is that business value of cloud drives decision. So it has to be connected to the business. So and this is pretty much important. We will also look into this in more detail. So the cost ownership of cloud usage needs to be taken by those that causing it. So I would say most of the time the engineers are empowered to do so, but often they lack certain visibility. We will also look into this one. And the fourth principle is also related to this, that the FinOps report should be accessible and timely, right? So a monthly invoice is not helping anyone. This is causing a lot of anger at a finance level and also at business level. Often in the past, I would say that engineers, it's not that they didn't care about costs, they just didn't know about the cost that they caused with their actions of provisioning infrastructure, horizontal pod autoscaler, setting these values, what is the effect of scaling a cluster to a certain size, and also how does utilization compares to costs. So a centralized team drives FinOps. Now we can, this is what I would like to hear your opinion maybe later in the chat, how you see it. This is a principle of FinOps. There's a lot of room for discussion from my point of view, what this means, and because we learned with autonomous teams that they should also consist of all kind of roles and functions. So we can discuss if a FinOps team should be centralized or if every team should contain maybe someone with a view on FinOps practices, so to say. All right, and the sixth one is take advantage of the variable cost model of the cloud. So that is just, that's why FinOps is pretty much focused on cloud. Of course, you can implement FinOps practices on-premise. There's absolutely so. But I think FinOps Foundation is really looking into the variable cloud model that you leverage this as much as possible, connecting to business value. Good, FinOps lifecycle. Some of you very likely have seen this before. This is shown very often. You have 3 stages here: inform, optimize, and operate. Some people think you should start with inform. Yeah, depending on what you want to achieve. Today we will start more or less with operate, but let's take a look in the actual example that I brought. FinOps team, and here are the stakeholders for whom is FinOps important. So usually the FinOps Foundation speaks of 4 main stakeholders: the engineering or tech, the business, executive, and finance. So, and as you can see here, the FinOps team is it's kind of centralized and connected to each and every. So, and you can also see it, I see it also as that FinOps is a kind of translator and sometimes also mediator to understand the different perspectives and needs, translates it, enable the other teams to implement FinOps practice. I would say, and this is my personal opinion, but I think it's wrong to conclude that the FinOps team is accountable or responsible for cost efficiency or cost transparency. Don't make them responsible, because it will cause a lot of frustration. I see FinOps Foundation as enabler of all the other stakeholders in the central go-to area and person. Okay, good. Starting with I brought it in fictional example, but I think that you hopefully can relate to. Try to make it tangible and also a bit of realistic, how to make FinOps work in an environment. And I placed the vision and mission here. Let's imagine you want to set up a modern e-commerce platform for selling excellent things of all kinds globally. So you have several people that you need for this. You have a CEO that for him it's important to steer the company and emphasizes on the vision and works then with business to make it happen. So digital controlling is supporting the CEO with financial insights, and the actual doing, I would say, of building the platform and the products on it is by the engineering teams. That can be product and platform teams. And let's assume here we have a few platform requirements that has been set. It should be flexible, scalable, secure, reliable. It was clear from the beginning you want to have autonomous teams and continuous delivery for time to market. And speed is pretty much important because it's a new e-commerce platform. Let's assume the same. So, and for this, if you look at Kubernetes, you will have all these 7 aspects that you can find in Kubernetes, right? So you have a great performance thanks to scalability of Kubernetes. Kubernetes is by design very reliable. You have all kind of liveness, readiness probing. The Kubernetes keeps your workloads up and running. It can be very cost efficient. Actually, it has been designed for cost efficiency by Google from the start after Borg, so that with a high density of containers, you can utilize the underlying infrastructure as much as possible. So speed of as you have a set of APIs and a defined way of deploying things and doing a scale out or horizontal or vertically and all these kind of things. I think this is the magic also of Kubernetes, that the world was united on a way to deploy processes, or so to say containers. And also I think it was a great advantage of using Kubernetes is the extensibility. Think of custom resources and all the add-ons that exist for Kubernetes. And last but not least is security and portability, so that Kubernetes can be run in any cloud. Once you have Kubernetes up and running, you have the same environment, right? So we also had a few discussions with Giant Swarm earlier that we see Kubernetes as an operating system of the modern infrastructure, and I think this is a very good description. Yeah. So in this scenario, Kubernetes was set for the deployment target, and the organization. This is an overview about the organization. You have a company, and then you have organization units, different departments. You have a platform and product teams. You have resources that you consume from the cloud, and you have a managed Kubernetes on the right. And the Kubernetes cluster, as I guess most of you know, not going into detail how Kubernetes in detail works, but consists of several components from a control plane with the ingress to get traffic in the cluster and all kind of worker nodes. In this scenario, you have a shared platform. So it's not that you have a cluster per product or cluster per team. So in this example, we will go with a shared cluster. So that means the workloads are running in one cluster, and which is provided by the platform team. So this is how it all starts. For some reason, my headlines are cut off. Okay, I don't know why, but so not that important. But here we're starting with the platform, right? So I'm focusing on a few central building blocks of a platform. We have monitoring systems, CI, CD, and self-service. Let's look in there. The usual stuff: logs, metrics, traces, and with self-service, I put just three examples here: like external DNS for DNS. Name, server management, secrets, infrastructure operator. So self-service, autonomous teams was a strict requirement. So let's have this as a platform service. And you can see here that the cost is 15, just a number that I made up. So just for simplifying. So and then you have application teams. And let's say you have a microservice architecture and you split your business domains here, or you have it like this. You have a home page or landing page, you have a login service, you have a product service that also maybe for searching through the products, you need to define the functionality. Just think of any that you can think of. You have a cart and a checkout. So and I put this on purpose, very simplified here, of course, that you have a kind of flow, right? People landing on a homepage, logging in, choosing products, putting in the cart and doing a checkout, just for simply to give a concrete example here. So let's start with speed is key for business. So we put now the focus on time to market at the very beginning. So remember, so we have a new e-commerce platform, and now we want to sell these products online fairly fast. So we put a focus on speed. And before we do that, we also want to connect using the operate phase of FinOps Foundation, speed of delivery and value to the business. So this is here pretty much in the focus. So if you want, we start now with the operate phase of FinOps. And now we see a few things. We went live. Actually, there's a headline so that we went live now. And you can see a few things here. We have now It was a good start, highly good promoted. We have 500,000 visitors. So that you can see this as monthly. Let's say all of this is monthly. And what you can see here is you have a platform team that has some of the services with a certain utilization. You have application teams. So, and if you look at this, you have a cost of the platform. It's like 45K per month, just a random number here, but for easier calculation. And then you do 100K of revenue. So, and then very simplified, you have 100K of revenue, you subtract the cost of this, and you have the profit of 55K. Okay, so nothing special. But, and let's look at the mood barometer. So we went live, right? So business says we went live, nice. So engineering, it works what we built, right? So executive says, oh, the profit is lower than they expected. And maybe this is a common mood. I don't know. I'm not an executive, but maybe this is a good standard mood. And finance says the view for me is too simple, right? So going back here, I only see 45K, and I have no insights of my profit centers and my cost centers here, and I'm not happy, right? Okay, so, and the shop continues. You are up now 100% with 1 million visitors. Wow, that's a lot, right? So utilization rises across all your workloads, and your revenue is also going up. But with a 100% up increase of visitors, you only have an increase of 25% of revenue. And here you notice that also the infrastructure costs, the OPEX, rise by 44%. So what happened here is that the profit only rise by 9% because we put a focus on speed. So maybe it's not very cost efficient what we build, but hey, we are making 125K revenue, but it somehow hurts that the infrastructure cost raised by 44%, and the profit is raised only by 9%, so which is much larger use base, and actually with a much higher revenue. Right? So let's look how the people felt about it. So executives still unhappy, but finance, he finds it very intransparent, and he has no clue about the cost drivers. Business, hey, it works, come on. And engineering, it still works. Also, at that point in time, they have no access to cost data. For them, everything looks good, right? So maybe they don't have even access to the revenue or profit data. For engineering perspective, it's fine. So, but the big question is what's driving the cost here. So let's enter the inform phase and call the FinOps team, or maybe set up a FinOps team, because at that stage, you might need them. Or at least you need to get into the topic. How can I increase the transparency? Right? How can I do? If maybe you want to do show the individual teams what costs they produced by transparency. Maybe the finance has to do some forecasting, right? Or maybe the finance finally wants to set a budget per application team. So as we are in Kubernetes, container allocations is a thing here. So, and let's enable the teams for transparency. So what we're doing here is, in the first step, that the central FinOps team reaches out to finance to understand the requirements. What is a cost center? Do you want to add your SAP number in here? Should we add this as a label? How do you want to structure the data? How do you want to see it? So the central FinOps team can help here to have these discussions. Otherwise, all the engineers would talk to finance, or finance would talk to engineers, and maybe they never talked before, which is not a problem, but I think they're speaking quite a different language. So the FinOps team can help here to, as said earlier, can be the translator for between these two worlds. So that means understanding the requirements from finance and translating them, and enabling the teams for tagging and labeling. So some examples here. As we are in Kubernetes, we are talking about labels. We have namespaces that you can separate already the teams into, and you should. So by whatever you find useful. So, but and when it comes to labeling strategy, the FinOps team can really support here to set up a common label strategy for the organization. And that the teams can then implement. Maybe they build even a sample application that has a proper labeling and then show it to the teams. Right? They can even set the pull request. I've also seen that the FinOps team can set the pull request for the labels of the Kubernetes deployments to help them out. Because the engineering, what is the top priority of the engineering? So, I mean, DevOps, yes, they're also responsible. You build, you run it. But I think from the application teams, the top priority should be feature development, increasing the business value, of course, being also responsible for security, performance efficiency, reliability, and now also cost efficiency. Okay, that is a lot of stuff. So, and that's why I personally believe that the FinOps team should be the enabler and should do the hard work and make it easy for the engineers to implement FinOps on their own when they have time. Because the execution of applying labels, here we are currently in transparency and inform phase, needs to be and is always prioritized by business. Right? The product owner needs to balance. Okay, we do a bit less feature development. Understood. The finance wants to have more transparency. Also, the CEO wrote an email that we will need to increase the transparency. We will now put a bit of focus on the transparency and the labels in Kubernetes. So, and there's at that time, feature development time goes down, or you increase the team size. But yeah, I don't know if this is a situation that you can really make happen. So that's why I believe the central FinOps team can really help here to sustain speed of delivery for features while also implementing cost transparency at that stage. So what they also can do is they can implement cost transparency at least to a certain extent globally or centrally, the FinOps team. They can install tooling, they can evaluate tooling, they can install, there are many Kubernetes, a few, not many, they're coming, but a few Kubernetes cost reporting tools and cost transparency tools. They can install it without talking to anyone. So that can also be done by the FinOps team. But when it comes to a certain granularity, let's say the cost per an application or multiple services in Kubernetes forms a product, and you want to combine these views for finance or for the product owners, you need to rely in the end on the engineers to do the proper labeling on a detailed level. Okay, so okay, so now a few days later, as said, while engineering can continue delivering features, we have now cost as a monitoring. So costs, I see that cost should become a first-class citizen next to performance metrics, your traces and your logs. So what happened here now is we installed a cost monitoring tool. That was an invest because maybe you remember the visitors is still 1 million, revenue is still the same, monitoring costs got increased. So the profit went down just because of the investment of installing cost monitoring or cost transparency. And now the picture is much more clearer. We see that product is the most expensive one, fairly easy. And now you can lead discussions like, is it valuable to have this kind of money? Is product really, how important is it? And so on and so forth. So now you're in this situation that you have a much better insight. And let's see how the people feel about it. Okay, so executives said it's fine, but we need to increase the profit. Okay, so and the finance says, more insights. That's very useful for me. So now I can see and I can put it to my SAP numbers, my cost centers, and I can really make much better reporting to my my program board. So in business, suddenly can become concerned. So because maybe they don't have a budget, maybe they have it, but now they quickly look at it and says, okay, okay, I'm becoming concerned. And in engineering, it says it works. But they also start feeling like, okay, take cost ownership is added on top of all my responsibilities. Not sure how I feel about it. Right? So, and then, as executives said, we need to increase the profit. Another great marketing campaign later. So what happened here? You increased your visitors by 50%. You increased your revenue by 32%, but because the servers are still not cost efficient, you end up with 100K and increased by 34%. So the profit went up a bit, but hey, the visitors and the revenue was 32% raised, so it's still not great. So 12%, but with all these efforts, the market campaign was super expensive, and the expectations were much higher on that. Okay, so let's look how the people feel about it. So executive, that's not enough. And they're here asking now, pushing hard for finance to decrease OpEx costs. And finance says, I don't know how this works, but I will try my best. So, and business says, uh-oh, my focus is actually features, faster, not cheaper. So it will slow me down. I will not meet my targets here. So they don't feel really good about it. And engineering says, well, I would like to optimize. I really would like to do it, but I don't have time for this. No one gives me the time. Okay, so let's enter the optimize phase and the FinOps team to the rescue. So optimize can be reserved instances, right sizing, all kind of automation, scheduled shutdown of non-prod environments. And yeah, so there are many, many examples. I just picked a few because we also have very limited time, but I like to tell you all of these examples one day, but let's pick few. So here we choose centrally, very little dependencies. Let's purchase discounts, right? So speaking here of reserved instances, also there are enterprise discount programs, but let's take the very simple example. So the FinOps team consulted the procurement after collaborating with engineering, business, and finance. So why is collaboration important here? If any one of you ever purchased reserved instances, you're pretty familiar, I guess, with the outlook and forecast that you need to make about your workloads. And maybe a few words to Kubernetes here. What is great is that Kubernetes has not a single issue with dealing with heterogeneous worker nodes and EC2 instance types, and it's also good for cost efficiency. So all what you have can be utilized for your platform, and you can add it as a worker node, right? So and have a high container density. That's the magic of any container management solution, but now here we are talking about Kubernetes. So procurement purchases reserved instances, and the FinOps team, they can lead the interviews. There's engineering. Do you have some major changes upcoming for your workloads so that we need much more or much less? So because we don't want to commit to a certain spend or reserved instance hours, and then you suddenly decrease. And engineering says, no, we are not going to do this. And business, what is the expected growth, right? Should we plan ahead already? I mean, we can purchase a lot more, and then we have some headroom. Says, yeah, of course, we want to grow. Okay, we take this into account. And finance is then consulted, and they purchase it. So what happens here is that the costs overall went down by 22%, and what also happened here is that with it the profit of course went up, right? So just because OpEx is seen within the scope of the revenue of the platform. So and here central team applied an optimization, and everyone benefits from it. I think this is a good example how central FinOps team can also help and support without causing too much, let's say, friction or efforts and lead times in optimizing further. So, okay, let's look how executive feels. Better, but want to do more. And finance says, I cannot really make sense of all this, but okay. So somehow we bought this, but all the rest was pretty complicated for me to understand how all these mechanisms work, what you all told me about right sizing, etc. Because the FinOps team tried to give them a broader understanding. So business said, okay, that was easy, but what's next? Because executive asked to do more. And the engineering, again, has an issue. I would like to optimize, but there's no time. So, and as it went further, so it was decided to do the kickoff as the right sizing initiative for profit and for fun. So how does it look? How can this look like? you can come up with automated right sizing for cluster and pod recommendations. Okay, so, and again, this is prioritized the execution by application and platform team, by the product owners. He says, okay, very important initiative, we will do the right sizing. Because we saw that optimizing the OpEx costs has a direct impact on business, so on our profit. Okay, let's do this. So what happened here is, so many of the services became cheaper. I don't have the individual callouts, but just believe me, I reduced all these numbers. But what also happened here is, switch quickly, just look at checkout. Maybe this is important, because checkout utilization is at 55%, do cost 8K. So, and here we reduced it by 2K, but what you can also see is that the utilization raised up to 80%. I think that maybe this was even a desired goal or KPI, that we want to have 80% utilization of our workload, and everyone should aim for it. Because what happened here is the OpEx went 20% down, but also the revenue went down by the same amount of visitors. So what happened, right? So even the profit went down significant. And I mean, yeah, what's going on here, right? What happened? Finance, no clue, went down, but so business, we need to really find out what happened. But engineering, I think I know what happened. Okay, so what happened is that the latency increased by 200% since we optimized. And that's led to people were frustrated, don't want to wait, maybe. There was just, and I know that Franz has a nice stories to tell about this. Maybe you want to jump in here for a sec, because I really like this story because it's connected to your client, and I've seen it myself.
Yeah, actually, I can more than happy to join in here. And yeah, it's actually a customer, Adidas. They actually found out that when they reduced the time that the response time of the website at checkout by half, then that's exactly the model. That 25% actually went up. So they actually made 25% more business. And this is something that is really, really key, is that understanding all these gradual things is like you need data to actually prove this and to make the right decisions. So yeah, that's a really great example of how you actually can really make an impact. And there's actually a number I've read somewhere that if Amazon would they actually optimized, but if Amazon would improve the response times by 2 seconds, I think someone calculated they would make $1 billion more revenue a year. I don't know if it translates, but it seems to have a huge impact. People actually are impatient, and actually we'll be seeing more and more of that because they actually do a lot of things in parallel.
Yeah. Yeah. So what the engineers found is out, thanks to monitoring and latency, and they fixed it, right? They even invested, as you can see here. They went from 8 to 12K to give it some room, increase the capacity for the checkout service. We learned it now the hard way. Yes, it increased by 10%, the costs, but here the revenue, I think this is exactly the example that you gave, Franz. So the revenue even went up much higher than before it went down, and this is a new record here for the e-commerce shop. The former increase, so the former value went up to 107K, and yeah, everyone's happy. So right, that looks great, good job. So nice. I think I understand now the mechanisms here. Was also consulted the finance, understood what latency is, etc. Business relieved, and engineering. I told you so, right? So they were.
Finance is never happy.
So, and they lived happy ever after. right? So, and of course not, because FinOps, the practices and the perspectives and the few examples that I gave you is something continuously. You always need to balance between fast, good, and cheap. You cannot reach both. I hope I could make this a bit clear, that there was a certain focus with certain initiatives on certain aspects, right? From speed to transparency to optimization, connecting it to business value. And from my point of view, it really depends on your situation, where you need to start and what you need to do. So we had situations, COVID times, travel, for example, travel companies, their main focus was to optimize, right? So business value, the perspective on business value was not so critical. They really need to bring down the costs as fast, as much as possible. So because there were no flights booked at that time, so it wasn't super important. The revenue was more that they needed to bring down the costs, the profit at that time. Of course, they're matching it against it all the time, but you can enter FinOps from an optimist perspective. Of course, you need to create a certain visibility here, but or maybe you have a business that is pretty mature already, and you want to optimize, as shown in the example, for even higher profit. So, and then you want to have much more granular, detailed reporting, and then you go in very little detail to the individual applications and services, right? So, and with operate, the culture that you need to set up or to deliver business value faster. And also there's the huge topic about unit economics. I would really love to talk to you about this today, but I plan to, but it's a huge, it's an absolutely fascinating topic, that you find a common KPI that the whole organization is looking at. Maybe one or two sentences to this. In our example, it could be the cost per transaction. So that you just divide your revenue from your costs, and then you have a kind of cost per transaction. And this is a KPI that you can easily then relate to. So the engineers know when I optimize something, the cost per transaction goes down. So the actual purchase, in our case, of a card. And the finance easily understands the cost per transaction if this goes up and down, right? In aggregates to all the applications that you have that pays into this KPI. So, but you can just approach me and ask me. I probably will do also something similar with unit economics. And just wanted to emphasize here, think of the trade-off of your personal situation. Just optimizing is not helping anyone. Needs to be put into perspective. Right? Okay, and then just to repeat, so the principles here, I will not read them again, but I think they are really useful, and I can highly recommend to join the foundation. Go to the website. You will find the run books of all kind, how to take how to get engineers to take action, adopting FinOps. There's a lot of movement these days now in practical advice. And I think that's it for now, and we can have some Q&A.